The hospital monitors beeped with mechanical precision in the private suite at San Francisco General, but Heidi Thompson knew every reading was a lie. Terminal pancreatic cancer, 6 months at most, the doctor had declared to the gathered family just hours earlier, his tone laced with practiced gravity. Heidi lay propped against the pillows, her sharp blue eyes scanning the room while her mind raced ahead of the script she had written herself. Her brother Mark, 42 and already calculating stock options in his head, loosened his tie and muttered something about the company's future. Her sister Emily clutched a handkerchief she didn't need, while their mother Margaret sat ramrod straight in the leather armchair, lips pursed as if already drafting the obituary. None of them suspected the diagnosis was fake, a meticulously planned test to reveal who truly stood by her when the empire was on the line. The real secret burning inside Heidi was Beatrice Hayes, the woman she had loved quietly for 3 years, currently waiting in a discreet hotel across the street under the cover of executive assistant. Their relationship had begun at a quiet charity gala for women in tech, a single conversation that turned into late-night strategy sessions, and eventually into something neither could walk away from. Heidi had built Thompson Tech from a garage startup into a billion-dollar AI security firm, but she had kept Beatrice hidden because the family's old money values would never accept a lesbian daughter at the helm. Now, after a real health scare last month had forced her to confront her own mortality, Heidi decided to force everyone else's hand. If they loved her, they would rally. If they loved the money, they would show their teeth. Mark cleared his throat. Heidi, we need to talk about the will. The board is already nervous about succession. Emily nodded too quickly. We're here for you, of course, but the company can't drift. Their mother simply stared, calculating. Heidi felt the first sharp tug of the wire she had strung across her own life. One loose word and the entire structure could snap. She forced a weak smile. I'm still here, aren't I? But inside she was already measuring the distance between protecting the empire she had bled for and protecting the woman who made every sacrifice worth it. The door clicked shut as the doctor left, and the family closed in like wolves who smelled weakness. Heidi's hand tightened on the sheet. The test had begun. Outside the window the Golden Gate Bridge glittered in the late afternoon sun, indifferent to the storm gathering inside the room. Heidi had spent weeks preparing every detail, forged medical records, paid off staff, a private jet on standby in case she needed to disappear. Beatrice had begged her not to go through with it. You're playing with fire, she had whispered the night before, her fingers tracing the line of Heidi's jaw. What if they turn on you? Heidi had kissed her instead of answering, because the truth was too heavy. She needed to know, before she signed the final papers, whether her blood family would choose her or the fortune. Mark paced now, phone in hand, already texting his lawyer. We should call the board, get ahead of the press release. Emily dabbed at non-existent tears. The foundation will want a statement. Margaret simply watched Heidi with the same cold appraisal she had used when Heidi was 12 and announced she wanted to start a company instead of debutante balls. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken greed. Heidi closed her eyes, letting the beeps fill the room, and wondered how long it would take for the mask to slip. She already knew the answer, not long. Down the hall Beatrice sat in the hotel cafe stirring cold coffee, her dark curls tucked under a baseball cap, heart hammering every time the TV above the counter mentioned tech heiress Heidi Thompson's sudden hospitalization. She had wanted to be in that room, holding Heidi's hand openly, but Heidi had refused. Not yet, she had said. I need to see their real faces first. Beatrice understood the logic, but the fear was visceral. What if the test broke them both? She checked her phone again, no message. The city hummed outside, oblivious, while inside the hospital the first crack in the family facade was already forming. Mark leaned close to Emily and whispered something that made her nod too eagerly. Heidi heard every word even with her eyes closed. The string was tightening. By the next morning the story had leaked. Thompson Tech CEO battles terminal cancer, screamed the headlines on every business site. Stock dipped 4% before the market even opened. Heidi watched the numbers tumble on her tablet while the family argued in the hallway outside her door. She had expected the press. She had not expected how quickly they would circle. Reporters camped in the lobby. Board members demanded video calls. And Beatrice, still hidden, texted frantic updates from her hotel. They're digging. Someone saw us at the gala last year. Heidi deleted the message and forced herself to breathe. The fake illness was supposed to be controlled chaos. Now it was spinning. Mark burst back into the room, face flushed. The board wants an emergency meeting. They're talking about naming an interim CEO, me obviously. Emily followed, already wearing the expression of a grieving sister rehearsing for cameras. Their mother stood in the doorway like a judge. Heidi, darling, we need to discuss the estate. For peace of mind. The word estate hung in the air like smoke. Heidi felt the wire cut into her skin. Protect the company she had built with 16-hour days and 0 vacations, or protect the woman who had taught her it was okay to be soft. She chose silence for now. I'm tired, she said, voice deliberately weak. The family exchanged glances and left, but she heard them in the corridor planning the reading of the will, just in case. Alone, Heidi dialed Beatrice on a burner phone. I miss you, she whispered. Beatrice's voice cracked. Then let me come. I'm your partner, not your assistant. The argument was old and new at the same time. Heidi had always chosen secrecy to shield Beatrice from the spotlight. Now the spotlight was here and secrecy was cracking. If they find out, the lawsuits will bury us both, Heidi said. The family trust has morality clauses. The investors will run. Beatrice was quiet too long. And if I lose you to this game? The call ended with no resolution. That afternoon the first scandal hit. An anonymous source told a tabloid that Heidi had been seen with a mystery woman at a private clinic. The article didn't name Beatrice yet, but the photos, blurry, taken through a car window, showed 2 women holding hands. Social media exploded. Heidi Thompson lesbian trended within an hour. Board members called demanding clarification. Mark stormed back in. Is this true? Because if the press connects you to some relationship, the company is finished. His disgust was naked. Emily gasped theatrically. Their mother's face went pale. Heidi felt the wire snap taut. Every instinct screamed to deny it, to protect the empire. But Beatrice's face flashed in her mind. The way she laughed when they cooked together at 2 a.m. The way she had held Heidi through the real health scare last month. I'm not discussing my personal life, Heidi said, voice steel under the feigned weakness. Mark's laugh was bitter. Personal life? This is our inheritance you're gambling. The word inheritance landed like a slap. Heidi realized the test was working too well. The family wasn't here for her. They were here for the money. And the world outside was sharpening its knives. That night Beatrice risked a visit, slipping in after midnight wearing scrubs she had borrowed from a friend. She crawled into the narrow hospital bed and held Heidi without speaking. For 10 minutes the world narrowed to the sound of 2 hearts and the distant city traffic. Then Beatrice whispered, "Tell them the truth. Or I will." Heidi's arms tightened. The choice was no longer theoretical. The crisis had teeth now and it was biting. The lawsuit arrived by courier at 9 a.m. the following day. The family trust, represented by Mark, claimed Heidi was mentally unfit due to her terminal diagnosis and demanded immediate conservatorship over Thompson Tech. The filing cited questionable personal decisions and attached the tabloid photos. Heidi read the document in stunned silence while her lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Carla Ruiz, paced the room. They're moving fast, Carla said. They want you declared incompetent before the press connects the dots to Beatrice. Outside, protesters had gathered, some supporting LGBT rights in corporate America, others holding signs demanding she step down for the good of shareholders. The board had called an emergency vote for that afternoon. Heidi's phone buzzed nonstop. Beatrice was in the hallway now, officially escorting documents. But her eyes were red. I can't keep pretending, she said when they were alone for 30 seconds. This is killing me. Heidi pulled her close, inhaling the familiar scent of vanilla and printer ink. One more day. I swear. But the promise tasted like ash. The board meeting was held via video from her hospital bed. 12 faces filled the screen, some sympathetic, most calculating. Mark sat at the head of the conference table back at headquarters, already acting CEO. We respect your privacy, Heidi, but the company cannot survive this scandal. The morality clause in your contract. Heidi cut him off. The clause was written in 1998. Times change. One director, an old ally, cleared his throat. Heidi, if you're involved with a woman, We need to know how it affects the brand. The question hung like a noose. Deny it and save the stock price. Confirm it and watch the empire she had sacrificed everything for burn. In the corner of the screen, Beatrice stood just out of frame, visible only to Heidi. Their eyes met. Heidi felt the wire slice deep. She had spent her entire adult life protecting the company from every threat, market crashes, hostile takeovers, even her own illness. But protecting Beatrice meant burning the bridge she had built to her family. My personal life is mine, she said finally. The room erupted. Mark smiled like a man who had just won the lottery. Then we have no choice but to proceed with the conservatorship petition. That evening the real accident happened. A photographer chasing a shot of the lesbian tech heiress rear-ended Beatrice's car on the way back to the hotel. Beatrice was shaken but unhurt. The photographer's camera captured everything. The new headline read, "Secret girlfriend of dying CEO caught in crash. Drama escalates." Beatrice called from the R, voice trembling. "They know my name now. They know everything." Heidi closed her eyes and felt the full weight of every choice she had made. The test had escaped the hospital room and was devouring their lives. She had to end it, but ending it meant choosing once and for all. The press conference was scheduled for Friday morning. Heidi insisted on leaving the hospital for it, wheeling herself into the Thompson Tech lobby under a blanket of cameras. She had rehearsed the speech 100 times in her head. Deny, deflect, protect the empire. Beatrice stood off stage, hidden behind a curtain, ready to walk away if Heidi chose the company. The family sat in the front row, faces masks of concern. Mark had already leaked to select reporters that Heidi was confused by her illness. Microphones bristled like spears. Heidi looked out at the sea of lenses and felt the wire cut to the bone. "I have pancreatic cancer," she began, voice steady despite the lie. Gasps rippled. Then she paused. Beatrice's face flashed in her mind. The night they had danced in the kitchen to an old song. The way Beatrice had held her when the first biopsy came back negative, but the fear remained. Heidi took a breath that felt like her last. "But that is not the only truth I need to share. I am in a loving, committed relationship with Beatrice Hayes. She is not my assistant. She is my wife in every way that matters." The room exploded. Flashes blinded her. Mark shot to his feet. Emily covered her mouth in theatrical horror. Their mother stood and walked out without a word. Heidi kept her eyes on the curtain where Beatrice now stepped forward, tears streaming. They clasped hands in front of the world. The wire snapped, but instead of falling, Heidi felt lighter than she had in years. The stock plummeted 12% in minutes. Lawsuits were already being drafted by noon. The board voted to remove her as CEO by 2 p.m. But in the green room afterward, Beatrice kissed her fiercely. "You chose us," she whispered. Finally. That night they hid in Beatrice's apartment, the city lights blurring through rain-streaked windows. Heidi's phone would not stop ringing. Death threats mixed with support messages. The family had filed an emergency injunction to freeze all assets. Work colleagues she had mentored for years were now giving interviews about Heidi's instability. The real consequences Heidi had feared were here, raw and bleeding. Yet holding Beatrice, she felt something she had never allowed herself before. Peace. The test had revealed the family for what they were. Now she had to survive the wreckage. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and desperation. Judge Harlan presided over the emergency hearing on the conservatorship petition. Mark's lawyer painted Heidi as a woman unhinged by illness and deviant lifestyle choices. Evidence included every tabloid photo, every stock dip, every anonymous email claiming Heidi had lost her grip. Carla fought back hard, but the damage was visible on the judge's face. Beatrice sat in the gallery, hands clenched, forbidden from speaking. During a recess, Heidi pulled Beatrice into a side corridor. "If they win, they'll take everything, the company, the houses, even the foundation I built for queer youth." Beatrice's eyes were fierce. "Then let them. We'll start over. Together." The words were brave, but Heidi knew the cost. Beatrice's own career as a freelance graphic designer would be ruined by association. Their friends were already distancing themselves. The price of courage was not abstract. It was rent money, health insurance, safety on the street. Heidi had always protected Beatrice from that reality. Now the reality was here. Back in court, the judge granted a temporary freeze on major assets pending a full hearing in 30 days. Mark smirked as they left. "You brought this on yourself, sister." Outside, protesters on both sides clashed. Someone threw a bottle that shattered near Beatrice's feet. Heidi pulled her close, heart hammering. That night they lay awake in a borrowed safe house, listening to every car that passed. Heidi's fake illness had become real in every way that mattered. The stress was shredding her actual health. She coughed into her pillow and tasted blood for the first time. The test had gone too far. The next morning, a new crisis landed. The board voted to sell the company to a conservative investor group that explicitly wanted family values restored. The offer was insultingly low. Heidi had 48 hours to respond. Beatrice sat across the kitchen table, coffee untouched. "Sign the papers. Walk away. We don't need the empire." Heidi stared at the woman she loved more than the empire itself and realized the final choice was no longer about money. It was about who she wanted to be when the dust settled. She picked up the pen. The wire was gone. Only the future remained. The grand ballroom of the Thompson Tech headquarters was packed for the final announcement Heidi had demanded. Cameras rolled live. The family sat in the front row, smug and expectant. Mark already drafting his first CEO memo. Emily planning the victory party. Beatrice stood at Heidi's side on stage, no longer hidden. Heidi, no longer pretending weakness, stood tall in a tailored black suit, the hospital gown long discarded. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice clear and strong. "3 weeks ago I told my family I was dying. The diagnosis was a lie." Gasps rippled through the room. Mark's face drained of color. "I faked terminal cancer to discover who would love me when the money was at risk. The answer was no one in this room except the woman beside me." She turned to Beatrice, eyes soft. "Beatrice Hayes is my wife. Today I am naming her sole heir to every asset, every share, every property. The company, the trusts, the foundation, all of it transfers to her effective immediately." Chaos erupted. Mark lunged for the microphone. Security stepped in. Emily screamed accusations of fraud. Their mother sat frozen, realizing the fortune had slipped away forever. Heidi raised a hand and the room quieted under the force of her presence. "You taught me that blood means nothing when greed is involved. Beatrice taught me that love means everything when the world burns. The test is over. The results are in." Later, in the quiet of their new home overlooking the bay, Heidi and Beatrice watched the sunset. The lawsuits would drag on for years. The company would be restructured under Beatrice's quiet leadership. The family had been cut off without a cent. Scandals still raged online. But the two women stood on the balcony, fingers laced, breathing the same salt air. The price had been enormous: reputation, relationships, safety. But the reward was a future built on truth. True or false? The price of courage and love is always worth the loss of family and fortune.